It's beautiful, Maggie. All of it. Even the ugly parts. Especially those. Daniel's words hover in the gallery's hushed atmosphere as we stand before my centerpiece, a massive tapestry of deep blues and purples shot through with veins of gold thread. At its center, a hollow space slowly filling with light, in the exact dimensions of the studio my family tried to take from me. I named it Inheritance. The Paris gallery buzzes with anticipation. Through the glass doors, I can see the lines stretching around the block, critics, collectors, art lovers, all here for my exhibition opening. My exhibition. The word still feels surreal, even after 6 months of freedom. My phone vibrates in my clutch. I ignore it. Probably another desperate message from my mother or another news alert about my sister's fraud charges. The headlines had been merciless. Artist sister facing white-collar fraud after failed family takeover. 5 minutes, Hannah whispers, adjusting my collar. At 68, my mentor still fusses over me like I'm her star student rather than a 55-year-old woman finally getting her due. Her eyes shine with pride. Are you ready? Before I can answer, my phone lights up again. This time, I glance down. It's Caitlin, my former professor. Turn on the news now. Hannah pulls it up on her tablet. A familiar face fills the screen. Robert, Patty's ex-husband, standing on courthouse steps. After reviewing evidence of financial manipulation and parental alienation, he announces, "The court has granted me full custody of our children." The camera pans to Patty being led to a police car. White-collar fraud charges. The ticker reads. The secret accounts weren't so secret anymore. Your sister's going to jail, Hannah says softly. No, I correct her. She's finally facing consequences. 6 months ago, I was weaving threads in a studio that had been my sanctuary for 5 years. 6 months ago, my family saw me as nothing more than a convenient solution to their problems. 6 months ago, I was 55 years old and still being treated like a child. Now I'm standing in Paris, about to address a crowd at my first international exhibition, with 5 more countries waiting. The gallery director signals. It's time for my speech. I take the podium, facing the eager crowd. Cameras flash. Critics lean forward. People ask why I weave hollow spaces. I begin. Empty rooms. Missing pieces. Negative space filled with gold. They ask what I'm trying to say. Movement at the back catches my eye. Mom slips in, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. No designer clothes today. No perfect makeup. At 78, she finally looks her age. The truth is, I continue, sometimes the most valuable thing we own is the courage to leave space empty, to resist filling it with other people's expectations. Mom's eyes meet mine. For once, she's the one who looks away first. Flashback, the first dismissal. The first time my mother called my art studio a waste of space, I was 22. That day, I'd just been accepted to art school with a partial scholarship. I'd rushed home to share the news, imagining at least a modicum of pride. That's nice, Margaret, she'd said, barely looking up from her book. Eleanor Sullivan had spent 30 years molding young minds as an English teacher, believing literature was the only worthy art form. But isn't it a bit late to be starting a hobby? Most serious artists begin much younger. I tried to explain it wasn't a hobby, that the program was prestigious, selective. She patted my hand with that condescending smile. Darling, you need a real career first. Something to fall back on when this phase passes. Now, 33 years later, she was doing it again, but this time with a purpose that made my stomach turn. Margaret, thank God. We have a situation. Her voice carried that familiar mix of drama and disappointment. Your sister needs us. I dipped my brush into the indigo dye, working on my latest commission, a large-scale textile piece for the lobby of a new art center. The morning light streamed through the bay windows of my studio, catching dust motes that danced around the threads that would pay my mortgage for the next 4 months. The studio had been my sanctuary for 5 years. Every fiber-filled shelf, every sun-bleached wall held a piece of my soul. I'd transformed the dilapidated house into a home and workspace after my divorce, pouring my settlement money and savings into the down payment. The real estate agent had warned me against buying in an up-and-coming neighborhood. At your age, you might want something more established, he suggested, as if turning 50 meant I should start planning for a sedentary, diminished life. What's Patty done now? I asked, keeping my voice neutral as I continued working. It's Robert. He's gone. A pause for effect. Left her and the kids. Just gone. Bank accounts emptied. The brush froze mid-stroke. What? She needs somewhere to stay while we sort this out. Your father and I have been talking, and there it was, the familiar weight settling in my chest before she even finished the sentence. The studio would make a perfect bedroom for the children, she continued. All that natural light. And honestly, darling, it's time you got serious about life anyway. You're not getting any younger, and these little crafts of yours. I glanced at the letter on my desk, the one confirming my acceptance to the Santa Fe Artists Residency, one of the most prestigious textile art programs in the country. 10 days until departure. The irony almost made me laugh. Mom, this is my workplace. I make a living here. Oh, please. Those little fabric pieces barely cover your expenses. We all know your father helps with the mortgage. The condescension in her voice made my fingers tighten around the brush. William Sullivan might be 80 now, but he still thought of me as his little girl playing with yarn, despite his own successful career as a history professor. They still believed I couldn't survive without their help, financial or otherwise. I bit back the truth that Dad hadn't contributed a dime since I bought the house 3 years ago after my divorce from Brian. They still thought I rented. My phone pinged with a text from Patty. Please, Maggie. The kids need their aunt. Don't be selfish. Selfish. Their favorite word for me since childhood. Selfish for choosing art school over teaching. Selfish for divorcing Brian when he demanded I give up my hobby. Selfish for missing Sunday dinners to meet gallery deadlines. Your sister will be there in an hour, Mom announced. We'll help move your things to the garage. You can store all your. She paused, searching for the right word. Supplies there. I walked to the kitchen and filled the kettle, my movements deliberate and calm. Another text buzzed through, this one from the women's artistic collective I'd been talking to about leasing the house. They were still interested. Perfect timing. Mom, I'll put the tea on. See you soon. I ended the call and leaned against the counter, a smile playing at my lips as I imagined their faces when they realized what was coming. They wanted my space? Fine, but they'd learn what happens when you push an artist too far. The kettle whistled. I pulled out my grandmother's china set, the one Mom always coveted but never got when Grandma left it to me instead. Might as well make this memorable. My phone lit up with a notification from the airline app. Check-in available for your flight to Santa Fe. I heard car doors slamming outside, Mom's Mercedes, Dad's BMW, Patty's voice carrying across the garden, already planning where to put Michael's bed. They were right on schedule, just like always. I smoothed my dye-stained apron and checked my reflection in the window. The woman staring back wasn't the pushover they expected. She had silver streaks in her dark hair, lined creased eyes that had seen half a century of life, and a quiet determination they'd always mistaken for compliance. She was someone else entirely, someone who'd been planning this moment for longer than they knew. The doorbell rang. I picked up the teapot, arranged perfectly on the antique tray with 4 cups, one for each of them, none for me. They'd need something to hold on to when their world shifted sideways. Coming. I called out, my voice steady and sweet. Let them think I was the same compliant Margaret, ready to sacrifice everything for family harmony. Let them measure my walls and rearrange my life in their heads. I had 10 days to show them exactly how wrong they'd been about me all along. At the studio, the invasion. The door opened to their expectant faces. Mom's barely concealed satisfaction, Dad's practiced concern, Patty's designer sunglasses hiding what I was sure were tactical tears. They filed in like they owned the place, already reaching for the tea I'd prepared. I smiled as I poured, watching steam rise like the plans forming in my mind. Tell me everything, I said. And they did, not noticing how I didn't touch my phone when it buzzed again. Probably my lawyer confirming the lease paperwork was ready. They didn't see me glance at the clock, counting down the hours until my meeting with the collective. They never did see me, really. But they were about to feel my absence in ways they never imagined. The light in here is just perfect for Michael's bed, Patty announced, pacing my studio with the confident stride of someone who'd never heard the word no. Her designer heels clicked against the hardwood floors I'd hand restored last summer after setting up my loom. We can put Emily's dresser where that table is. I sat perched on my work stool, watching my sister measure my life with an iPhone app. She'd always been beautiful in that effortless way, homecoming queen, perfect wife, mother of two adorable children. Even now, in supposed crisis, her makeup was flawless, her clothes immaculate. At 58, Patty had maintained the appearance of the golden child, successful, put together, the pride of the family. Meanwhile, I was the perpetual disappointment, the dreamer who never settled down properly, despite being older than half my clients at the gallery. Her kids, Michael and Emily, were with our parents at the park, probably being promised the moon and stars, just like their mother always was. I'd always had a good relationship with my niece and nephew, teaching them to weave simple patterns on my smaller looms. They actually appreciated my art, unlike their mother. "How long do you think you'll need to stay?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Patty pushed her sunglasses up onto her head, revealing red-rimmed eyes. "God, Maggie, my husband just abandoned me. I'm not exactly working with a timeline here." Mom swooped in from the kitchen, armed with her third cup of tea. At 78, she still moved with the energy of someone 20 years younger, especially when one of her daughters needed rescuing. "Just never me. Margaret, don't upset your sister. She's been through enough." She turned to me with that familiar look, the one that said I was being difficult again. We found some lovely storage units nearby, very clean, very secure. I thought of the acceptance letter in my desk drawer, of the lease agreement waiting in my email, of the carefully orchestrated exit strategy I'd been piecing together for months since receiving the residency invitation. "Actually," I said, "I have some exhibitions coming up. Commissions to finish." "Exhibitions?" Mom scoffed. "You mean those little craft shows at the community center?" "The Bradshaw Gallery, actually. I didn't mention it was one of the most prestigious textile art spaces in the Southwest. They wouldn't care anyway." "Oh, please," Patty interjected, pulling open my supply drawers without asking. "You can weave in the garage. It's not like you're Louise Bourgeois." A memory flashed, Patty tearing apart my first handmade journal in college because I wouldn't let her use my car for a date, Mom telling me I was overreacting when I got upset. Another memory, Patty accidentally spilling coffee on my application portfolio the night before it was due for a major scholarship. Mom making me clean it up while Patty went out with friends. The pattern had been established early. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Called your landlord. He's willing to discuss early lease termination." I almost laughed out loud. At 80, Dad was still sharp enough to run his investment group, but they still thought I rented this place. They never bothered to ask how I actually bought it 3 years ago after my divorce settlement and a major commission from the State Arts Council. Never questioned where my craft show money really went. "I need to make some calls," I said, standing up. "Work stuff. Now." Mom's voice rose an octave. "We're trying to help your sister. It will just take a minute." I stepped into my bedroom, closing the door on their protests. I dialed Hannah, my former professor and current mentor. At 68, she'd become more than a teacher. She was the mother figure I'd never had, one who actually believed in my work. "They're here," I whispered, moving in like they owned the place. "Lease papers ready? The collective can move in next week," she confirmed. "You're sure about this, Maggie?" "It's a nuclear option." Through the door, I heard Patty. "This wall color has to go. It's so artsy." "Never been more sure," I answered. When I returned, they'd already started a pile of my non-essential supplies, my special order threads, my reference books, my mood boards, all deemed unnecessary for their vision of my future. Patty was on the phone with what sounded like a painter, discussing color swatches for the walls. "We can convert your bedroom," Two, Patty was saying. Make it a proper playroom for the kids. You can take the pull-out couch in the living room. Absolutely not. The words came out sharper than intended. Mom's head snapped up. Margaret, your sister needs. My sister needs therapy, I cut in, immediately regretting the outburst. Not yet. Not time yet. Patty's face crumpled right on cue. Mom rushed to comfort her while Dad appeared in the doorway, frowning. Just got off the phone with Steve Jenkins, he said. Your landlord's being difficult about the lease, says he hasn't heard from you about moving out. I forced my face to remain neutral. Really? How strange. This is ridiculous. Patty snapped, mascara running perfectly down one cheek. I have nowhere else to go. My children need stability. And they'll have it, I said softly. Just give me a few days to sort things out. They relaxed visibly, interpreting my words as surrender. Mom started talking about paint samples. Dad made notes about moving trucks. Patty pulled out her phone, probably texting her friends about her wonderful, accommodating sister. None of them noticed me slipping the acceptance letter into my pocket. None of them saw me checking flight details or confirming appointments with my lawyer. They never did notice much about me except when I wasn't fitting into their plans. I think I saw some boxes in the garage, I offered. Let me check. In the garage, I leaned against my car and took a deep breath. Through the window, I could see them in my studio rearranging my life without me, just like always. This wasn't the first time Patty had claimed my space. When we were teenagers, she'd temporarily moved into my room after a fight with Mom, only to stay for the next 2 years while I slept on a fold-out in the den. When I'd received my first major commission 10 years ago, she'd insisted I come help with her kitchen renovation the same week it was due. My phone buzzed again, an email from the airline confirming my seat upgrade. First class, might as well be comfortable while burning bridges. I heard Patty calling my name, probably wondering where those boxes were. I straightened up, adjusted my expression, and headed back inside. 9 days left. Just 9 more days of being their perfect scapegoat. Then they'd learn what happens when you mistake silence for submission. Flashback, the divorce and the house. 7 years ago, I sat across from Brian at our kitchen table, signing divorce papers. After 15 years of marriage, it had come down to this: a stack of documents and a house divided. You're making a mistake, Maggie, he said, sliding the papers back to the lawyer. You're too old to be starting over. Too old to be chasing some art dream. I was 48 then, apparently ancient in his eyes, despite him being 5 years older. We'd met when I was teaching art at a community college, trying to please my parents with a stable job while creating my own work on the side. Brian had been charming, supportive, until he wasn't. Your weaving is a nice hobby, he'd said the night I'd told him about applying for a major exhibition. But we agreed you focus on teaching. That's the responsible path. We hadn't agreed to any such thing, but Brian was good at rewriting history to suit his narrative. Like my family, he'd seen my art as a phase I'd eventually outgrow, a childish indulgence rather than my life's work. When I'd received the acceptance letter for the exhibition, my first major break, he'd undermine me with a dozen practical concerns. The time commitment, the expense, the unlikelihood of success. Be realistic, he'd said. Women your age don't suddenly become famous artists. The divorce had been almost a relief. Dad had sided with Brian, of course. He's just looking out for your best interests, Margaret. Security is important at your age. Mom had been more direct. Well, that's what happens when you put your selfish pursuits ahead of your marriage. Patty had swooped in with false sympathy and thinly veiled satisfaction. Don't worry, you can always stay with us until you find a teaching position again. Your art room would make a lovely guest suite. Instead, I'd use my portion of our assets to buy the fixer-upper with the perfect north-facing windows. The real estate agent had tried to steer me toward condos and retirement communities, but I'd insisted on the 2-story craftsman with the large front room ideal for a studio. It needs a lot of work, he'd warned. Not really suitable for a single, mature woman. I'd signed the papers that same day, feeling more alive than I had in years. The first 6 months had been hard, fixing plumbing, restoring floors, creating a functional living and working space on a tight budget. But every repair, every improvement had been mine. When I installed the custom lighting for my work area, I didn't have to justify the expense to anyone. When I stayed up all night finishing a piece, no one complained about the noise or the mess. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was entirely mine. A sanctuary where my art wasn't a hobby or an indulgence, but the very purpose of the walls that contained it. And now my family wanted to take it away, just as I was finally gaining recognition for my work. Not this time. The preparations. So, what should I do with these? I held up a set of expensive silk threads, playing my part perfectly. The garage gets pretty hot in summer. They might warp. Patty barely glanced up from her phone. Just sell them. It's not like you'll need them anymore once you get a real job. I added them to the keep pile when she wasn't looking. These threads had been used in the commission piece that paid her mortgage last month. Not that she knew that. The anonymous transfer I'd arranged after Robert left had kept her afloat, but she probably thought it was from one of her countless rich friends from the country club. Speaking of jobs, Mom chimed in, sorting through my sketches like they were yard sale items. Your father knows someone at his department looking for an administrative assistant. Perfect timing, really. I nodded, pretending to consider it while texting Hannah under the table. Meeting still on for 3? Bringing contracts plus keys for collective. Val, are you even listening? Patty snapped. We're trying to help you build an actual future here. Sorry, just checking gallery details. I paused, then added innocently. By the way, how much is Robert sending for child support? The room went silent. Patty's face flushed. That's none of your business. Mom interjected quickly. Margaret, please. Just trying to help plan the budget, I said, voice dripping honey, since we're all so concerned about proper adult responsibilities. Dad cleared his throat from his corner, where he'd been making calls. Actually, we should discuss financial arrangements. Your mother and I can help with. No need, I cut in. I've got it covered. They exchanged looks, the kind they'd been sharing since I was a child, and announced I wanted to be an artist. Poor, deluded Margaret. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Patty. Daniel. My heart skipped a beat. Daniel Cooper, my ex-fiancé, Robert's former best friend. I hadn't heard from him in 20 years, not since our engagement had imploded just weeks before our wedding. I need to run some errands, I announced, grabbing my keys. Art supplies to sell, you know. Perfect timing, Mom said. We need paint samples from the hardware store. I'm thinking a soft yellow for the children's room. I was already halfway to the door. Make a list. I'll check prices. The drive to Hannah's studio took 15 minutes. I spent every one of them imagining my family's faces when they realized what was coming. Hannah greeted me with a knowing smile and a stack of papers. At 68, she still had the energy of someone decades younger, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob that framed a face lined with a lifetime of laughter. The collective is thrilled, she said, spreading out the lease agreement. 12 months, starting next week. They'll take good care of the place. Your art is safe storage in our climate-controlled warehouse until you're back from Santa Fe. She paused, studying my face. Are you sure about this, Maggie? It's a nuclear option. I thought about this morning, Patty measuring my studio windows for curtains, Mom planning to paint over my carefully restored walls, Dad making calls about proper jobs as if I were a recent college graduate rather than a mid-career artist. They've never seen me, I said, signing the papers. Time to show them what that costs. Hannah handed me a coffee. Your latest piece sold, by the way. The blue tapestry with the silver accents. Buyer paid double asking price. I smiled, thinking of Mom's dismissive little crafts comment. The price would cover Patty's rent for 6 months, not that I'd be helping with that anymore. My phone lit up, Daniel again. It's about what really happened 20 years ago. Patty knew things she never told you. Of course she did. My perfect sister, always managing everyone's stories but her own. I should get back, I told Hannah. They'll wonder where I am. She handed me a set of keys for the collective. Don't forget to introduce yourself to your new tenants. I drove home slowly, stopping for paint samples I'd never use. Through the studio windows, I could see Patty and Mom rearranging my furniture, planning their takeover of my space. Inside, they'd made more piles, donate, trash, maybe keep, years of my work sorted by people who never understood it. "Oh good, you're back," Mom said. "We need to discuss the timeline for moving your things out. Patty's lease ends next week and—" "Actually," I interrupted. "I made a list of things I need to sort through first. Give me a few days." Patty rolled her eyes. "Seriously? The kids need—" "Just a few days," I repeated softly, "to do it properly." They relented, probably thinking I was finally accepting their plan. Mom looked relieved. Dad patted my shoulder awkwardly. After they left, I stood in my studio, my real studio, not their imagined children's bedroom. Evening light painted the walls gold, catching the edges of half-packed boxes and wrapped textiles. My phone buzzed one last time. "Daniel? Coffee tomorrow?" "You deserve to know the truth." I texted back a time and place, then started wrapping my grandmother's china. They'd missed these cups when I was gone. 7 days left. The countdown continued. Coffee with Daniel, the revelation. Daniel hadn't changed much in 20 years. Same thoughtful eyes, same way of running his hand through his hair when he was nervous, though the hair was now salt and pepper. He was already at our usual table at Riverside Coffee when I arrived. "You look good, Maggie," he said, standing awkwardly. "Success suits you." I'd seen his work in architectural magazines. After a broken engagement, he'd gone on to design award-winning, eco-friendly buildings across the Southwest. In another life, we might have been building those together. "Let's skip the small talk," I said, not removing my jacket. "What do you know about Robert?" He sighed, pushing a coffee toward me. "He's been cheating on Patty for years, since before the kids. And your sister knew the whole time." The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. She knew? She needed his money, his connections. Played the perfect wife while he played around. He leaned forward. "But that's not why I called you." A barista passed by, giving us space to process the weight of his words. "Remember why we broke up?" he asked. "You said you needed space, that we wanted different things." The memory still stung, even after all these years. We'd been planning our wedding. I'd just been accepted for my first major exhibition, a 3-month showcase in Chicago. Then, suddenly, Daniel had ended things, saying he couldn't compete with my ambition. "Patty told me you were seeing someone else," he said quietly. "Said she caught you with some gallery owner in Phoenix. That you'd been laughing about me, calling me controlling." His hands clenched around his cup. I believed her because, well, she's Patty. She's always been the honest one, right? I felt the blood drain from my face. "What?" "I found out last month she'd done the same thing to Robert's previous girlfriend. It's her pattern: eliminate threats, maintain control." He pulled out his phone, showed me old texts from Patty from 20 years ago. "She was scared you'd get serious about your career, move away, leave her without her safety net." Safety net? You. The responsible one, the one who'd take care of her when everything fell apart. He paused. Like now. My hands were shaking as the pieces fell into place. The exhibitions I'd mysteriously lost. The relationships that had ended abruptly. The opportunities that had vanished. She ruined us to keep me available for her eventual breakdown, Maggie. There's more. He slid an envelope across the table. Robert didn't empty the accounts. Patty did. She's been moving money for months, preparing for this. Playing victim is her specialty. I remembered the first time Patty had played victim, when we were teenagers. She'd broken my mother's favorite vase, then sobbed to Mom that I'd pushed her. I'd spent the summer grounded while she went to cheerleading camp. It was a pattern I'd seen repeated throughout our lives, but had never fully understood until now. She's always needed a scapegoat, Daniel continued. Someone to blame, someone to fix things. You've been both for her. I thought of the anonymous transfers to her account, of my parents rushing to her rescue, of my studio being sacrificed for her convenience. Why tell me now? Because she's doing it again. I overheard her at the country club yesterday, telling your mother she's planning to stay with you permanently. That she'll help you see reason about giving up your little hobby now that you're in your 50s. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. The touch still carried too many what ifs, too much lost time. You need to know what you're dealing with, Maggie. You always deserved better than being her backup plan. As I drove home, memories flooded back. Patty's jealousy whenever I received recognition, her sabotage disguised as concern, her uncanny ability to create a crisis right when I was on the verge of success. The Chicago exhibition that could have launched my career 20 years ago. The teaching position at the prestigious art institute that mysteriously fell through after Patty put in a good word for me. The collaborative project with an internationally renowned artist that dissolved after Patty mentioned at a dinner party that I was probably moving back east. All these years, I'd thought these were just bad timing or my own inadequacy. Now I understood they were calculated moves in a game I didn't know I was playing. And all because Patty needed me as her safety net, her perpetual plan B. Well, plan B was about to vanish. The confrontation. Back home, Patty's car was in my driveway. She was in my studio, supervising movers who were shifting my furniture to make room for her vision. "Oh good," she chirped when she saw me. "We need your help deciding where to donate these wall hangings. They're not really appropriate for a children's room." I looked at her, really looked at her. My beautiful, manipulative sister, the golden child who'd been orchestrating my life's disappointments since we were kids. The careful makeup that hid the lines around her eyes, the designer outfit that screamed success despite her supposedly dire financial situation, the practiced concerned expression that had fooled me for decades. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll keep them for now. Don't be difficult, Maggie. The movers are charging by the hour. Who's paying them?" She blinked. "What? The movers. Since Robert left, you're broke, right? Who's paying?" A flash of something crossed her face, calculation, maybe fear. "Daddy, of course." Interesting. I headed to my bedroom, locked the door behind me. My phone lit up with a text from the airline. "Your flight is confirmed for Sunday." I pulled out my grandmother's old writing desk and began a letter. "Dear family, by the time you read this." A knock at my door. "Maggie?" Patty's voice, honey sweet. "Mom wants to know if you'll join us for dinner. We're planning the nursery color scheme." "I'll be right there," I called back, continuing to write. 4 days left. Just 4 more days of playing the compliant daughter, the supportive sister. 4 days until they learned what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. I sealed the letter, added it to my go bag, and headed out to dinner. Let them plan their nursery. Let them measure and scheme and rearrange. They thought they were dismantling my life. They didn't realize they were just providing material for my greatest work yet, my disappearing act. My phone buzzed one last time. "Hannah, collective members want to meet tomorrow. Ready to set the plan in motion?" I texted back a single word. "Ready." The next morning, I was organizing my most valuable pieces for storage when I heard Patty's voice rise from the studio. "What's this?" I entered to find her waving my journal in the air, her face flushed with anger. "The exit plan? You're planning to abandon us?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart raced. "You went through my things?" "Of course I did. You've been acting weird for days." She flipped through pages. "Santa Fe? An artist residency? Are you kidding me?" Mom and Dad burst through the door, probably drawn by Patty's rising voice. "What's going on?" Mom demanded. "Show them." Patty thrust the journal at them. "Show them how selfish she really is." I watched their faces as they read. Dad's turned red, Mom's crumpled in familiar disappointment. "You accepted this without consulting us?" Dad's voice shook. "Without considering your sister's situation?" "My situation?" I laughed, and it sounded foreign even to me. "You mean my career, my home, my life?" "Don't be dramatic," Mom cut in. "This isn't about you. Patricia always needs something," I interrupted. "And I'm always expected to provide it because that's what family does, right? You wouldn't know about family, would you?" Patty shrieked. "Too busy with your little threads to care about anyone else." I thought of the anonymous payments, of the times I'd watched her kids so she could network with Robert's colleagues, of every sacrifice they'd never noticed. You know what's interesting? I said, keeping my voice low. None of you ever asked how I bought this house. They paused, confused by the change in topic. What are you talking about? Dad frowned. You rent from Steve Jenkins. No, I bought it 3 years ago with my little craft money. I turned to Patty. The same money that mysteriously appeared in your account last month when Robert left. Her face paled. I don't know what you're. I know what else is interesting. How you told Daniel I was cheating on him right before my first major exhibition, the one that would have taken me to Chicago, away from being your backup plan. That's ancient history, she stammered. And he's lying. Like you lied about Robert's affairs? About the money you've been hiding? I took a step toward her, decades of suppressed anger finally finding voice. Like you lied every time you sabotaged my career to keep me available for your emergencies? Mom stepped between us. Stop this nonsense. Your sister is going through a divorce she orchestrated. I cut in. But you'll never see that, will you? Because Patty is the victim. Patty is the golden child. Patty needs the studio, the house, my life. Dad put his hand on my shoulder, his tone patronizing. Margaret, you're being hysterical. This isn't like you. I shrugged off his touch. No, this is exactly like me. You just never bothered to notice. I pulled out my phone, dialed a number on speaker. Hello? Hannah's voice filled the room. Maggie? The collective's here. We're ready when you are. Perfect timing, I said. Could you bring over the lease paperwork? My family should probably see it. You can't lease what you don't own. Mom snapped. I reached into my desk, pulled out the deed to the house, watched their faces as reality crashed in. You're right, I said softly. Good thing I own it then. Patty lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. You can't do this. My children, your children have a trust fund from Robert's parents, the one you didn't tell anyone about. I met her eyes. Daniel told me everything. He's lying. You can't believe. I saw the bank statements, Patty. I saw the texts. 20 years of manipulation is enough. The doorbell rang. Hannah entered with a group of women, the Artists Collective members. Right on schedule. You must be Margaret's family, one said brightly. We're so excited about transforming this space into our new creative hub. Mom grabbed my arm. Whatever game you're playing, stop it now. Game's already over, Mom. I gently removed her hand. You have until Sunday to find alternative arrangements. You'd throw your own sister out? Dad's voice rose. Your own flesh and blood? No, I said, watching Hannah lay out the contracts. I'm just doing what you taught me, looking out for family. My chosen family. The ones who actually see me. Patty started crying right on cue, but for the first time, I didn't feel the pull to fix it. Years of trained responses, comfort Patty, apologize, sacrifice, fell away like old skin. I'll be gone by morning, I told them. The collective moves in next week. You can reach my lawyer if you have questions. Gone where? Mom demanded. I thought of my packed bags, of my ticket to Santa Fe, of the freedom waiting on the other side of Sunday. Does it matter? I asked. You never saw me when I was here anyway. They were still shouting as I walked out, their voices fading behind me like old threads being cut from a loom. 2 days left, but really, I was already gone. The night before, that night, I sat alone in my studio, surrounded by half-packed boxes and bubble-wrapped textiles. Tomorrow I would leave, and this space, my sanctuary for 5 years, would begin its transformation into something new. I ran my fingers over the wooden frame of my favorite loom, remembering the day I'd installed it. Brian had called it a waste of money. At your age, you should be thinking about retirement, not starting new hobbies, he'd said. My parents had echoed the sentiment. Only Hannah had seen it differently. It's never too late to create your masterpiece, Maggie. My phone buzzed with a final text from Daniel. Proud of you. For the first time in years, I am too. I smiled, thinking of our conversation over coffee. The shock of learning how Patty had manipulated us had given way to something unexpected, a sense of freedom. The past couldn't be changed, but understanding it released me from its grip. In the kitchen, I made tea using my grandmother's china, one last time before it was packed. Grandma Rose had been the only one who'd encouraged my art. Make something beautiful, she'd say whenever I visited. The world needs more beauty, especially from those who've seen enough of life to know its value. She'd left me her china set and a small inheritance, enough for art school, though my parents had pressured me to use it for a proper education instead. I'd compromised then, as I'd compromised so many times over the years. But not anymore. I spent the night weaving one final piece on my small travel loom, a tapestry of blues and purples with threads of gold running through it. At its center was a hollow space, an emptiness surrounded by color and light. I named it Inheritance, thinking not of money or property, but of the choices we inherit and the ones we make for ourselves. By morning, it was finished. I packed it carefully with my other essentials, left the key to the studio on the countertop, and drove to the airport without looking back. The departure, the moving truck arrived at exactly 9 a.m. on Sunday. I watched from the airport terminal as my phone exploded with notifications, texts from mom, missed calls from dad, voice messages from Patty, each one more desperate than the last. A video call came through from Hannah. I answered to see chaos unfolding in my driveway. "You're missing quite a show," she said, turning the camera. Patty stood in her designer dress, blocking the movers with her body. "This is my sister's house. You can't just..." Actually, one of the collective members held up the lease. "It's our house for the next 12 months. Legally binding contract." Mom's Mercedes screeched into the driveway. She jumped out, still in her church clothes. "Where is she?" "Where's Margaret?" "Probably on her way to her flight," Hannah answered calmly. "As she informed you all last week." Dad appeared, face red. "What flight?" The collective began moving in their equipment, looms, supplies, furniture, professional, efficient, unstoppable like a wave washing away footprints in the sand. "This is ridiculous," Patty screamed. "I have children. We have nowhere to go." "That's not true," another collective member said. "According to these bank statements," she waved a folder, "you have quite a healthy savings account, plus that lovely condo in your name." Patty's face went white. The secret account, the one she thought no one knew about. "How did you?" she started. "Your sister's lawyer is very thorough," Hannah explained. "Had to be for insurance purposes." My boarding call echoed through the terminal. "Flight 247 to Santa Fe now boarding." "Wait." Mom grabbed the phone from Hannah. "Margaret, baby, please. We can talk about this." "Check the studio door," I said quietly. "I left you something." The camera shook as they rushed to the studio. There, taped to the door, was a sealed envelope. "Should I stay on the line?" Hannah asked. "No need. I've seen enough." I ended the call, but not before I heard the envelope being torn open. Inside, they'd find three things. First, a copy of the lease agreement, legally binding and ironclad. Second, a photo of me at the airport, smiling and free. Third, a letter that began, "Dear family, you wanted my space. Congratulations. Now you have nothing." My phone buzzed continuously as I boarded the plane. I scrolled through the messages before switching to airplane mode. "Mom, please come home. We can fix this." "Dad, this is completely unacceptable behavior." "Patty, you vindictive witch. You've ruined everything." The last one made me smile. Coming from her, it was almost a compliment. A final text from Hannah. "They're still here. Your mom's crying, Patty's threatening lawyers. The collective is calmly unpacking while your dad makes angry phone calls. It's better than theater." I settled into my first-class seat, ordered a herbal tea, and pulled out my sketchbook. The flight attendant peered at my drawing, a family of shadows being washed away by waves of color. "That's beautiful," she said. "What's it called?" "Notice served," I replied, adding another stroke of blue. My phone lit up one last time before I turned it off completely, an email from my lawyer. "Lease filed and recorded. Restraining order ready if needed. Your family has been formally notified that any attempts to enter or interfere with the property will result in legal action. Enjoy Santa Fe. You're free. Free. The word echoed as we took off, the ground falling away below us. In my mind, I could see them standing in my driveway, Mom clutching her pearls, Dad on the phone with his useless lawyer friends, Patty realizing her backup plan had backfired spectacularly. The collective would transform my studio into something new, something vibrant, something that had nothing to do with nurseries or family obligations or golden children who take and take and take. I ordered another tea, raised it in a silent toast to the clouds outside my window. To Patty, who thought she could claim my space like she claimed everything else. To my parents, who'd have to find a new scapegoat for their golden child's disasters. To the artist they never saw, finally weaving her masterpiece in disappearing ink. The plane leveled out above the clouds. Below, my family was learning what happens when you push too far, take too much, see too little. I pulled out my noise-canceling headphones, drowning out the last echoes of their voices in my head. Let them rage. Let them threaten. Let them finally feel what it's like to be invisible. I had a new loom waiting in Santa Fe, and this time, I was the only one holding the threads. Santa Fe, 3 months later. You turned your trauma into pure gold, Maria said, studying my latest piece. The New Mexico sun streamed through the studio windows, catching the metallic elements in my work. This is going to be the centerpiece of the show. 3 months had passed since I left my family standing in that driveway. 3 months of peace, creativity, and healing in this desert artist haven. The hollow spaces in my textiles, once symbols of what I'd lost, were now filled with gold thread, catching light and transforming absence into presence. The gallery director wants to know the title, she continued, snapping photos for the exhibition catalog. I stepped back, considering the massive tapestry, swirling shapes in deep blues and purples shot through with veins of gold thread. At its center, a hollow space in the perfect dimensions of my old studio, now filled with light. Inheritance, I decided. I'm calling it inheritance. My phone chimed, the first time I'd allowed notifications in weeks. An email from Hannah. You might want to see this. Your sister's meltdown has gone viral. Attached was a link to a local news website. The headline made my stomach drop. Local woman claims artist abandoned family. Truth reveals different story. Oh God, I muttered, clicking the link. Maria read over my shoulder as comments poured in. Wait, the abandoned sister had a secret condo and savings account while crying homeless? Who tries to steal their siblings' house and business? Found the golden child's Instagram. Years of bragging about wealth while her sister was actually paying her bills anonymously. The parents are just as bad. Who sides with a lying manipulator over their other kid? I scrolled through hundreds of similar comments, my hands shaking. Looks like your sister tried to play victim on social media, Maria observed. It backfired spectacularly. My phone buzzed again, an email from Mom. How could you let this happen? Your sister is devastated. Her reputation is ruined. The country club is gossiping. Please come home and fix this. Delete. Another from Dad. This public humiliation is unacceptable. Your sister's children are suffering. Their friends' parents are asking questions. Delete. You okay? Maria squeezed my shoulder. Actually, yes. I put my phone down. For the first time in a long while, I really was. The studio door opened and Hannah burst in. Margaret, amazing news. The International Gallery Association wants your show, all of it. They're offering a world tour. My heart stopped. World tour? 6 countries, starting with Paris. She handed me the official letter. They're calling your work a revolutionary exploration of family dynamics and emotional liberation. The advance alone is more than most artists see in years. I thought of my family's dismissal of my little fabric pieces, of Mom's suggestion that I become a receptionist, of Patty measuring my studio for her children's bedroom. There's more, Hannah continued. That blog post about your story is being optioned for a book deal. People are calling it a perfect example of quiet revenge and karmic justice. Maria hugged me. You did it. You really did it. My phone lit up one last time. A text from Daniel. Saw the news. Saw your art too. You're incredible, Maggie. Patty is showing her true colors to everyone now. No one to manipulate when the whole world knows the truth. The gallery wants to know if you'll speak at the opening, Hannah said. Share your story. I turned back to my tapestry, inheritance, with its hollow center slowly filling with gold thread. Yes, I said. I think it's time. Maria raised an eyebrow. What will you tell them? I dipped my needle in gold thread, adding final touches to the piece. The truth. That sometimes the greatest masterpiece you can create is the life you save by walking away. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Exclusive. The real story behind viral family drama. How one artist turned pain into success. I silenced it without reading further. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them finally see what they missed all those years. I had textiles to finish, a world tour to plan, a life to live. And somewhere in my old studio, now filled with creative energy and genuine art, the last traces of my family's control were being woven over, one thread at a time. Paris Gallery, 6 months later. It's beautiful, Maggie. All of it. Even the ugly parts. Especially those. Daniel's words hovered in the gallery's hushed atmosphere as we stood before my centerpiece. 6 months had passed since I'd fled to Santa Fe, and now I was standing in Paris, surrounded by my work and people who actually valued it. The Paris Gallery buzzed with anticipation. Through the glass doors, I could see the lines stretching around the block. Critics, collectors, art lovers, all here for my exhibition opening. 5 minutes, Hannah whispered, adjusting my collar. Are you ready? Before I could answer, my phone lit up. Caitlin, my assistant. Turn on the news now. Hannah pulled it up on her tablet. A familiar face filled the screen. Robert, Patty's ex-husband, standing on courthouse steps. After reviewing evidence of financial manipulation and parental alienation, he announced, the court has granted me full custody of our children. The camera panned to Patty being led to a police car. White-collar fraud charges. The ticker read. The secret accounts weren't so secret anymore. Your sister's going to jail, Hannah said softly. No, I corrected her. She's finally facing consequences. The gallery director signaled. It was time for my speech. I took the podium, facing the eager crowd. Cameras flashed. Critics leaned forward. People ask why I weave hollow spaces, I began. Empty rooms. Missing pieces. Negative space filled with gold. They ask what I'm trying to say. Movement at the back caught my eye. Mom slipped in, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. No designer clothes today. No perfect makeup. At 78, she finally looked her age. The truth is, I continued, sometimes the most valuable thing we own is the courage to leave space empty, to resist filling it with other people's expectations. Mom's eyes met mine. For once, she was the one who looked away first. My family wanted me to trade my dreams for a nursery, I said, watching her flinch. Instead, I framed their demands and turned them into art. Every dismissal became a thread. Every manipulation became color. The crowd murmured appreciation, moving closer. They say success is the best revenge. I paused, letting the words hang. But I disagree. The best revenge is living truthfully, even when the truth hurts. After the speech, Mom approached. She was holding a familiar envelope, my last letter, worn from repeated reading. Your father's firm is finished, she said quietly. The country club rescinded our membership. Patty's children. She trailed off. Are better off with Robert, I finished. Away from the manipulation. We lost everything, she whispered. No, I corrected her. You lost what was never really yours. My space, my talent, my compliance. She looked around the gallery, at the price tags that could buy several houses, at the critics scribbling rave reviews, at the life she tried to dismiss as a childish hobby. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't expect forgiveness, I responded. Good, I added, because that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I chose myself. Finally, the gallery director approached with a champagne bottle. They were ready for the toast. Mom stepped back, understanding the dismissal. You look strong, she said. I always was, I replied. You just never saw it. She slipped away as cameras flashed. The director raised her glass to Margaret Sullivan, whose Inheritance series just sold for a gallery record, and whose story reminds us that sometimes the greatest art comes from knowing what to leave behind. I raised my glass, catching Daniel's proud smile, Hannah's knowing nod, Maria's thumbs up from the back. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from the Women's Collective, now thriving in my old studio. Your space is filled with light and creation, just like you wanted, just like you deserved. I looked around at my work, at the hollow spaces now filled with gold, at the shadows transformed into light, at the truth woven in colors too bright to ignore. They wanted me to trade my dreams for a nursery. Instead, I turned their demands into my masterpiece, and now the whole world could see exactly what they missed. I raised my glass higher, toasting not to success or revenge, but to the empty spaces I refused to fill. Sometimes the most beautiful art comes from knowing exactly what to leave behind. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance is the life you choose for yourself.